everyone. My name is Jiamin, and I'm the lead at Parcel Monitor, the leading platform for e-commerce logistics insights. Together with our studies and experts around the world, we hope to provide our community members with a platform to acquire knowledge and exchange insights about retail, e-commerce, and logistics. So thank you very much for joining us today for our very first episode of our Unpacking series, where we invite industry experts to unpack key concepts from trending topics in retail, e-commerce, logistics, and supply chain. To kickstart this series, we've chosen a topic that has been hyped up for almost a decade now, I would say, but even more so in the past 1 or 2 years, and that is blockchain. So what exactly is blockchain technology, and what are its real and practical implications for supply chain leaders? So we're extremely excited to have with us today Wolfgang to unpack blockchain in logistics. Wolfgang is a global thought leader and practitioner in supply chain and logistics with decades of experience in the logistics sector, having worked as the head of supply chain and transport industries for the World Economic Forum with large logistics organizations such as Poste and TNT, and it's even written about disruptive logistics technologies. So really, really nice to have you, Wolfgang.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Great. So maybe without me further talking any further, let's get the session started. So but to warm you up a bit, we like to ask our speakers this fun question. Some might find it a bit challenging, but yeah. So Wolfgang, could you introduce yourself to our community? But I know I've mentioned this word a couple of times in your profile, but without using the words logistics or supply chain.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a German, born in Germany, but lived in many places in the world, including New York, Paris, Geneva, and Hong Kong. I like the tension and the differences and the similarities between the West and the East. And I'm also passionate about the flow of goods, information, and money across the world, which drives my interest in advanced technology. And as such, I'm one member of the World Economic Forum expert network for blockchain, or expert community for blockchain. And my personal special interest is in driving projects that help to transform our linear and a bit destructive economic model into a more sustainable approach. And more sustainable means for me driving, yes, the economic side, because we all need to make a living, but at the same level also the environmental side, the social side, and not to forget the regulatory part, which in fact sets the framework and the scene for all what we are doing.
Fantastic. Thanks for that introduction. On hindsight, maybe I should have included the word blockchain as well in the exclusion words. But yeah, thanks for the introduction, Wolfgang. So maybe let's get right into the meat of the topic, blockchain and logistics. So blockchain has been and still is one of the hottest topics in recent years, but many still kind of struggle to make sense of it. Could you explain briefly to our audience broadly what blockchain technology is?
In a nutshell, and put in a simple way, blockchain is a endless database consisting of immutable records built in a chain, so chained immutable records. That's how I see blockchain, and it is immutable because it is distributed across many nodes, so many computers, and to change one part, you have to simultaneously hack all the computers that are part of the network. Of course, that also drives the question, how do you ensure that not one party controls the nodes. And that's a question of governance, which is very important in blockchain as well. So the idea behind blockchain is in fact to cut out the middleman. And why that? Because blockchain works best in environments of mistrust. And unfortunately, it is very hard to build trust across all actors in an economy. So what we use usually are lawyers and banks or very respected companies to establish the judges and the stewards of trust. What the idea behind blockchain changes is that we can take these middlemen function out and have a very democratic community of people that can transact with each other on the basis of trust, because they know that the records cannot be faked, changed, duplicated. There's, of course, a shortcoming to the story, and that is that we are talking about the records on the chain, but the records have to come on the chain, and that the information which is put on the chain is authentic is a very different story. Of course, the blockchain concept has different solutions to solve that, but to wrap it up, blockchain does not usually come in isolation. It comes as all advanced technologies in a bundle. And for example, what is bundled in blockchain applications and solutions are artificial intelligence and IoT, to possibly mention the most common ones. There could also be optical character recognition or robotics process automation.
Okay, got it. Yes, and I would say that's quite a lot to unpack, but yeah, I think we'll gradually find out a bit more about its implications in logistics, right? So I think Wolfgang, you mentioned, of course, blockchain in essence is a chain of immutable records. It's especially useful when there's an environment of distrust or where there needs to be a middleman. And that kind of brings me to the next question, right? So, so for logistics or supply chain, I would imagine definitely logistics supply chain involves many of these middleman processes. So going back to a bit of the history there. So what actually made logistics companies start to explore or experiment with blockchain, and how did it actually first emerge? So how did it first look like?
It's always difficult to go back and find the real beginning. And we know that blockchain is linked to cryptocurrency and to Bitcoin. So payments are an area where it is good to look at and see whether it has started there. But I think that the first big announcement of blockchain was the launch of TradeLens, which is a platform, a digitalization and tracking platform in the maritime industry, launched by Maersk, which is now the second largest container shipping line in the world, and IBM. And the idea was to get the entire global volume of container traffic onto that platform. And with some challenges at the beginning, the project turned out to be successful. And today, there are probably about 70% of the volumes on that platform. So that's a very concrete example. And that was, for me, the first time where I thought, wow, blockchain is really going to happen.
That is indeed very interesting. When you said that blockchain is indeed really going to happen, for me, it's like, well, it's real. There's real applications, and we have two major players there, Maersk, IBM, and then also we have 70% of the volume on the platform. And this also brings me to my next question. So I believe everyone is also curious. So what was actually the use cases that you see in logistics today, especially maybe back to the example that you give on the platform launched by Maersk and IBM. So what is the blockchain use case there?
There are three reasons why people think about blockchain. And you're absolutely right. It is important to start with the use case. Many people start with the technology, but it's important to think first, what are my challenges? And then see what technology may be able to help. So when we think about the flow of goods and also the e-commerce environment and the broader context of globalization, global trade, there is an increasing demand for transparency. For example, in respect to the provenance, where do my goods come from that I buy or consume? There are, of course, compliance and other legal considerations, but it goes down to the consumer. And when we combine, for example, this increasing demand for transparency with an immutable QR code printed on a product or a smart packaging, and think about that QR code can contain the ID, the identity key for a producer, or you can even serialize the product. So you give that individual product, which could be a bottle of wine, an identity. Then you see how technology ensures that people can trust more into the provenance and into the history of a product. And you put this on the blockchain, and the beauty of a blockchain is also that you could make that available to everyone. So everybody could go on the platform and check who was the producer of that wine, when was that wine produced, what are the grapes in it, where was it grown, when was it harvested. So that's one area where blockchain, here in combination with a QR code, come into play. Another area is the digitalization of documents. And where we have seen significant progress recently is the electronic bill of lading. It's a very traditional document, and there were legal frameworks in the 14th century made in Italy, and it could cost you your arm. They would just cut it off if you faked a bill of lading. So that shows that immutability and criminal act was always on the table as a consideration. And therefore, one of the early developments driven by companies like CargoX was to digitize the bill of lading and produce an electronic bill of lading. And last year, 3 shipping lines issued their electronic bill of lading based on the blockchain platform of WaveBL. And these 3 shipping lines are MSC, which is the largest container shipping line in the world, got to that space last year. Then there's Hapag-Lloyd, the Germans, and the Asians, ONE. All 3 issued almost within 3 months their electronic bill of lading. And the expectation expressed by for example, MSC, is that the industry can save 4 billion just by digitizing that very important document. And then there are other considerations and use cases, for example, in the space of compliance. Also, an earlier development was the tracking of diamonds by Everledger, and we know that in the business of diamonds, there are also conflict diamonds. And there are areas which are not compliant from the outset and need stricter surveillance and control. And the diamond is a very good thing or product to track, because each individual diamond is unique. So you can put that uniqueness on the blockchain, and you can check that uniqueness later and see whether the characteristics are the same. And then there are information like the previous owners, etc., which is very important in the diamond business. By the way, there's fish as well, like tuna, which has very specific characteristics. So every tuna is different from the other. So you can put these characteristics on the blockchain. So these are 3 use cases. Which one is the provenance, the other is take paper out of the supply chain processes, and the third is ensure compliance.
Well, and hearing this talk about these use cases, very interesting, and it sounds like there's a lot of potential there. I mean, what I'm hearing is that what the benefits of blockchain, we have, of course, there are the ethical kind of benefits where I know where my goods are coming from. I know I'm not purchasing conflict diamonds, for example, if I can have a transparency in the whole supply chain, know where is the origin of the product, and then to all the way to the very direct kind of like cost savings, where the digitization of documents, like you mentioned, on the electronic bill of lading. And I think I've one kind of question, follow-up question from that. I'm quite curious, because in my kind of previous life, I dealt a bit with shipping documents. And I think fraudulent bills of ladings were actually very common then. So would you say that with blockchain and with the digitization of documents, would this be one of the key ways can prevent fraudulent bills of ladings, and how commonly or widely adopted are these electronic bills of ladings right now?
That's a very good question, and that is also the crystallization point where you see the limits of technology. So technology, from a technological point of view, there is nothing in the way to make the electronic bill of lading the common documentation. But the challenge is the regulatory side. So there are the Rotterdam rules, which regulate globally the documentation, and all countries have to sign on for the electronic bill of lading. So every country needs to declare that they accept electronic documents. And that's the challenge. It's not the technology. It's not even the willingness of the player. It is the governments that have to accept, instead of paper, the electronic versions. And then that may sound trivial, but then need to adopt the entire processes, which requires a certain level of digitalization of the customs processes.
Okay, interesting. Yes, definitely. I think there are some times where you can see that technology is advancing so rapidly that it's quicker than how regulation can keep up, right? So yeah, interesting. Thanks for sharing, Wolfgang. Okay, so maybe going into, of course, the next question. Yeah, so maybe let's go back into time on when we did not have blockchain and how, of course, now when we have blockchain. So how has it and how will it transform supply chain and logistics in your opinion?
First, what becomes clear through, I think, the conversation we are having is that blockchain is not something you can take off the shelf, right? And something which is visible. Blockchain is like databases in the past. We had revolutions in the database development. It's almost like the Intel inside of a computer. So you don't see it, and therefore it is difficult to say it is here where blockchain will have the impact. But clearly, all the companies that are dealing with transaction and with payments, they have an element of blockchain in their solutions, and that is a bit my vision, because it gives that additional element or point of trust. So the whole payment system will benefit from the blockchain discussion. And maybe it's also here the point to say that blockchain is a subcategory of a larger topic, which is distributed ledger technology. So, and this is distributed ledger technology refers to that the database is distributed across the network. So every computer has a copy of the same database, which makes it immutable. I said that at the beginning. But also to say there is not only blockchain, there are also other distributed ledger technologies around. But I see the value in the payment. I see it also in trade finance. We have there the traditional letter of credit, which is an expensive and cumbersome instrument, which is usually out of reach for many micro and small businesses. So we will see the digitalization of the letter of credit. It takes currently probably 1 to 2 weeks to process a letter of credit, and that can be brought down to about maybe 5 hours, 4 hours, which is a major gain, and we don't need to ship paper documents around anymore, and identities are clear. And also how that works, it will be linked with specific features of the blockchain. I haven't spoken about that, and other technology. A specific feature of the blockchain is in fact a smart contract. So we have the payments, here we talk now about contracts. And the smart contract on the blockchain is a piece of software that is triggered by certain events. So you can combine this smart contract, that software, with Internet of Things devices, IoT devices, could be a sensor fixed at the container or the goods itself. And then when preset parameters are fulfilled, for example, the shipment crosses the equator, take a very simple example, and that message is received through the Internet of Things device by the smart contract can arrange the payment. So that's a very interesting part of the blockchain technology, because it allows machine-to-machine trading. So one car could trade with another, if you wish, if they make an arrangement about car sharing, for example. But that goes in the space of automation. So in a more and more automated world, we will need smart contracts, and smart contracts come with blockchain. So that's another area, and then the entire piece of transparency in the supply chain and trust. I think their blockchain can contribute a lot. But also here, another point which is important to make. You have the maximum value when you don't have one central party driving the solution. Because if you have one central party driving it and you have a centralized solution, that is as secure as a blockchain. Blockchain gets interesting when you don't have that central party. So where it may change the entire way an industry operates, and the supply chain and logistics industry is a very fragmented industry, is that we move from a more competitive, isolated, siloed, egocentric approach to a much more open ecosystem, collaborative approach. And that's maybe also a very important point. It's not maybe, it's a very important point, is that blockchain therefore is a collaborative effort. So as it is the glue and the transaction platform amongst different parties who may not even know each other, right? It is teamwork. They have to agree to the terms of engagement, to the governance. They can build a consortium. So it's very interesting from a mindset point of view.
Yeah, indeed. I think just listening to you talk a bit about the features of the blockchain, smart contracts, and it's a bit different, or I would say counterintuitive to what we're used to, where there's always a central party making decisions. Each organization is their own entity. So this would be very interesting to watch and see how else I think blockchain can disrupt the whole logistics space. Okay, so also going on to the next question that is a bit broader in nature. So similar to blockchain technology, disruptive technologies in general are emerging at a very incredible pace. And for supply chain professionals, it can be quite confusing on, okay, so which kind of technologies should I look at? So how can I get started? How can I better identify whether this particular technology is suitable or mature enough for investment? So what's your take on this, Wolfgang?
Very good question. And probably very difficult to answer. The decision on whether to invest in a technology depends very much on the DNA of a company. And if you take the Maersk example, Maersk was always seen as an innovator in the container shipping industry. And Maersk did not invest into a mature technology. Maersk developed a solution that finally worked and inspired people in a way that they got engaged. So here, it is not about the maturity. It's about your positioning you wish to have in the market. And of course, you do some due diligence, and your experts, your CTO and CIO, they tell you, yes, this is a technology which helps us to deal with a certain use case. So that credibility and due diligence you need. But very often then the pioneers have to drive it all. Then with technologies, it comes in solutions that you need to test. You need to see where does it stand. But again, only if you want to be at the forefront. Because what is a bit the challenge in this thought experiment is that at an early stage, customers usually don't want to pay for that. So you put this as an R&D, research and development expense, to see whether ultimately that technology holds water. So it is less about certainty, what the question implies. It is more about the willingness to experiment, the willingness to bring new things to the organization, the willingness to inspire your own people, the young people, to bring things like I mentioned before, artificial intelligence, autonomous vehicles, decarbonization technologies into the organization. So it depends probably much more on your strategy and, as I said, on your culture than on the stage of the maturity of a technology.
Thanks, Wolfgang. Although it was a difficult question, I think that was a great answer. Yeah, indeed, I think that's the case. I can resonate, I guess, from the consumer side, where when I'm purchasing something from a company, honestly, I don't care about what technology you're using. For me, what matters is that I get my product, I get what I want at the best kind of cost or price possible. So yeah, interesting answer. Okay, so I guess we're approaching the end of the session. We had a lot of things to unpack. Really great answers so far, Wolfgang. So just to wrap things up, so very last question on Wolfgang, what do you think will be the next big thing for blockchain in logistics?
I'm waiting for the next big thing in logistics for quite some while, so not sure whether I can pinpoint that down in the context of blockchain. But we will see, especially, and we will not see, but it will happen in the space of payments, that blockchain-based solutions will encroach the supply chain and logistics world. I'm certain, because that is already happening without us really seeing it. So that's what I'm certain about. And then there will be bits and pieces of blockchain in the transparency and visibility solutions. But again, as you rightly say, as a customer, as a consumer, I don't care whether there is blockchain or a central database behind, whether it's artificial intelligence or just mathematical models. I just want that the companies live up to their promise, and technology can be used in different circumstances or under different circumstances, and so also very different technologies can lead to the same solution. But in the case of blockchain, it has some characteristics, and if we give me a longer term, I'm very excited about the whole smart contract dimension of blockchain.
Thank you so much, Wolfgang. I think that's it was really nice speaking to you, and I believe, like myself, I think the rest of our community, we have taken away a lot of things about blockchain and logistics. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invitation, and yeah, the very good questions.
Great to hear that. So I think thank you everyone for joining us today and unpacking blockchain and logistics. Remember to follow us on your LinkedIn page and join our community for more of these unpacking sessions with experts like Wolfgang. So thanks everyone again, and have a great day.